Good morning. You get the luck of having an attorney and a finance guy together that neither one are very good with humor, but hopefully can cause a couple of thoughts. So let me start with the question. Where do we get most of our financial habits? Anybody get it from like their grandparents, parents? Do you ever look back and look at your family discussions or decisions and go, maybe that wasn't the right way? And I had a lot of bad financial advice from my parents. And by the way, they didn't mean to be that way. And what I found is if we go through a few things today, maybe you guys as business owners will be able to look at things just a little bit different. Now, a little bit about my background. I have ran, about 7 different businesses. I'm on boards of another 5 others. I travel internationally and do a lot of things to try to help businesses succeed. One of the businesses in Kansas City, we were running about $6 billion of clients' money. So I always like to point that out because in my world, there are these things called consultants. And usually consultants are somebody that consult versus doing. I'm in this every day trying to help people run better businesses and succeed. So for all of you, congratulations on your relationships and your success with City Lifestyle. Maybe a couple of these things will strike a chord with you. Okay, so let's start with a couple of things. In my world, one of the risks that I run into over and over is your business cannot be your only asset. Now, how many of you are so focused on revenue today and want it to grow, but there's this thought that, is this the only asset I've got? And by the way, I have to go with this question all the time. Now, it's nothing wrong with growing a business. And by the way, we are all in that camp. And the businesses, I sold a business in 17, and at that moment, it was 85% of my family's wealth. By the way, if you were my financial advisor, would you think that that's a good or a bad idea? 85, anybody like, I can't see some of you, but hopefully you're going, no, that's a terrible idea. Here's the other thing. Most financial advice you get at a cocktail party or a yard or over a fence is wrong. And so start with being just a little suspicious and start with trying to both be better at this, study, and figure out how you look at this. Now, a couple things go on in business. One, you have your future income, your opportunity, and 2, optionality. And both of those things I think are really important today. Now, we'll go through some things that I think are pretty basic. We'll go into some things that may make you think just a little bit. If any of you want more information through any of the City Lifestyle folks, our team is happy to connect with you. We're here in Kansas City, but we do things all over the country. All right, so 1, cash in, cash out culture. I'll talk about that just a little bit further. You no longer have benefits. Some of you came from a corporate environment, maybe had 401k and other things, and maybe that's gone. You maybe don't have consistent income. And I tried to train my wife after 42 years of marriage, telling her we're broke all the time, and she tells me we're not broke anymore. But as a business owner, do you ever need to feel like you're broke? Because so much money is put into the business. Taxes become a little bit different. You never had to plan on paying taxes before, so as a franchisee, you would. And then the temptation to delay, I'm not gonna do this until things settle down. And so maybe, and by the way, I love the post, somebody said earlier, poser. I always felt that way, like, I thought I'd built really good businesses, but what if? Anybody ever feel what if? What about next quarter? What about next month? What about next year? So we're gonna give some principles to hopefully help you answer a couple of those questions. All right, so the first thing, none of these are financial advice I'm giving you, but they're really, really good principles. The first thing is, as a business owner, you need and we're gonna talk about this, you need to have a separation between your personal wealth and the business income. And I brought a lot of people into sales jobs in Kansas City and across the country, and the first thing is you need 2 accounts. So you need a business account, and then you need a personal account. They're not the same. My wife always had trouble with what we wanted could be done out of my business account. Everybody ever feel that way? Like, listen, we want to do this thing, and we'll talk about that thing. So you need a 2-account system. You need an emergency fund, and now I'm speaking to you personally. You need an emergency fund. Everybody's different. 3 to 6 months is a good amount of money to have saved, and you don't save it to spend. Now, I have a lot of people here from different generations. I'm a baby boomer. I view money differently than people younger than me and older than me. But I can tell you when there's enough money in savings and it's liquid, life feels a little more relaxing. Everybody feel that way? Have you ever had a time, what's that country music phrase? There's too much month at the end of the money? Okay, so emergency funds make it to where you get to live a more relaxing life and do a better job in the businesses you're building. Secondly, you strategically pay down liabilities. Not all debt is bad, but when you're using debt to create a lifestyle, that creates stress and anxiety. And you guys are in a business that has some variability. Commission-oriented businesses aren't always stable, right? And you go from good month to bad month. What happens when you used a lot of debt and interest to be able to live the lifestyle that you wanted? So use that as a point of caution. Now, the other thing that I think is interesting is protect yourself. Now, I don't need to go down too much of a rabbit trail here, but all of you are the income machine. And when people don't properly cover themselves with things like either disability, life insurance, those things, you can't answer for your family what happens if. And I've got a number of stories, and I'll share one and it happens to be a very personal story. We had a family friend that was running in Kansas City a commercial painting business. I'm not a motorcycle guy. I used to ride motorcycles on the street, don't anymore. And in a day's time, he had a motorcycle, went down, and had a milk truck run over his leg. Okay, so he goes from, this is a guy that was probably a $600,000 a year income guy running paint to projects, bidding projects. Instantly, he has one leg he can walk on, and instantly was out of an income. And so I'm not trying to say that to scare you, but just realize you need to get with an appropriate advisor. You are the most important asset you're trying to protect. Make sure that with you and your family, you can answer those questions in the what-if scenario. Okay, so for all that, let's get into some of those things, pick the right account to do the right job. Now, the first thing I want to talk to is short-term. We've talked about that. That's probably a high-yield savings account. Most banks have them. Don't pick a checking account that pays zero to keep 3 to 6 months worth of savings in it, right? You want to earn something. Interest rates are not great, but it's better than zero. Then you're looking about a retirement account. Those are those things that you're not going to move over, and you're comfortable that you're contributing to your own future over a period of time. Next category is we're going to move into long-term growth. Those are things that have just a little bit more risk. Now, in our world, most of our managed accounts over 5 years net of fees have ran somewhere between 16 and 22% per year average over 5 years. But you're going to have more of a bumpy ride. The market goes up, the market goes down, things affect it. And then you get into your business retirement, which is probably things like a solo 401k, a SEP, those kinds of things. And then in order, the reason that the buckets go left to right is you have to make sure that you're handling the short term first so that as you move over, you're comfortable that you're not going to need the money out of a retirement account. One of the things that people don't think about is how in our country, how expensive it is to pull money out of an IRA or a 401k if you need to use it for something. So hopefully those things make sense. Now, if you don't listen to anything else I'm saying, my grandfather was a Church of Christ preacher. He said all sermons had 3 points, and for people to hear him, he had to make all 3. I want you to listen to this. So I want you to understand the power of both saving, but more importantly, the power of compounding. So let me ask a couple of financial questions. How many of you bought a car in the last year? Anybody? Anybody shocked at how expensive it is? Okay, so for those of you in the room that might be 40 or above or 50 or above, what's happened over the last 10 years? What's happened to cars? Just take a car. I think the lower end Tesla today, my friend here loves Teslas. I make fun of him, so no attorney jokes, but just the Tesla. So the idea that cheapest Tesla there is today, I think is $38,000 right now. Okay, a $38,000 car was really expensive 10 years ago, right? That was a really high-end car. How many of you bought a home in the last year? Okay, right? How much has it gone up even in the last 5 years? I was shocked. I do a lot of international traveling, and I was in the UK for another event, and I didn't get the data, and data lies. People don't necessarily get that. But they said the beginner home or beginning apartment in the last 4 years had gone up almost 40%. And you know that their wage power didn't go up. So inflation's real. Can we all agree on that? Things cost more today than they did yesterday or the day before. So this graph's really simple, and I've got another one for you. Well, I guess before I ask this, is $1 million a lot of money today? Well, guys, if you don't have $1 million, it's a lot of money, okay? It turns out that I tell people, we deal with some pretty wealthy people, it turns out the first 50 or 100 million is the hardest. And by the way, the first million is the hardest when you don't have it. But look at it this way. Take wherever you are in the spectrum, and if you have 0 today, we take a really simple rate, and I'm not saying you're gonna earn 10%, you may or may not. But if you were 40 years old today and you wanted to have $1 million by age 65, okay? So you would have to save $800 a month. Okay, maybe you could, maybe it's painful. If you didn't start doing this until you got to age 50, you'd have to save $2,500 a month to be at $1 million, okay? Now, maybe some months you could, maybe some months you can't. But is there a month in there that starts to feel uncomfortable? Right? Today, it's really difficult for most people to retire on $1 million. Kind of a really simple rule is you could pull out probably 3.5% to 5% in income off of what your nest egg is. Said differently, at $1 million, excuse me, at $1 million, you're gonna probably be able to pull out $40,000 to $50,000 a year, which in today's standards is not a lot of money. All right, so let me go to the next slide. $3 million, okay, so that's getting a little bit closer. So at 40 years old, we would have to save $2,500 a month to at age 65 have $3 million. At $3 million, if I do that 4 to 5%, you might be at $125,000 to $150,000 of income. What's the point? When I was younger, we worked towards people saving $1 million or having it in retirement. Today, it's not that impactful. And again, I'm not trying, everybody's situation's different. But I can tell you that saving, 1, at a younger age is critically important. And 2, I can tell you consistency of saving is really important. And I would tell all of you, teaching your children and grandchildren to save is one of the most important lessons that you can do. Because a lot of times, we teach habits by them watching us. Have you ever done something and your kid or grandkid said, I learned it from you? Oh, come on, somebody's done that, right? Maybe it's a bad word you wish they repeated, and I can remember when we were raising kids, my son used a word with his mother that was not appropriate, and where did you hear that word? He's like, Dad, you said it. Bad day. We also teach really good habits. Bill High talked about how do we pass on family values. Families that financially are stable tend to stay together. Families that teach good habits end up having better things happen because there's less stress. So is anybody surprised by the amount that it takes per month at your age to get to 3 million? I think that's just a really good way of looking at it. And wherever you are, pick a point. All right, so a couple other things, and these are, and I said it, but I think it's important. 1, biggest mistakes, cardinal sins. 1, not separating business finances and personal finances. Have a 2-account system. Have a business account. I would suggest you move a certain amount of money from this business account over to your personal. That's what you live on. Do not mix them. People frequently, when they start running businesses in any fashion, forget that the IRS and the state wants their part. And I can tell you, if the IRS becomes your partner via a tax lien, everything you go to do becomes affected very, very quickly, just like debt. Next, saving to spend. A lot of younger people that I deal with have trouble with that. I call that the case of the I wants. Now, when I was younger, I had no money in college. I put myself through, and I had a really bad case of the I wants when I graduated from college. I want a car, I want this, I want that, and frankly, you have no money. And for a while, it was almost like I felt like I was owed something because I'd never had it. And younger people, that's the way we all are, right? You've lived on nothing. Be careful, this phrase, saving to spend. So you save $10,000, and then you decide, here's this really cool thing that I'd like to have, or a trip you wanted to take. And I love memories, but they're done as a priority to a lot of people, not when you have the money. Next, chasing the investment where you can't lose. Anybody ever lost money on an investment they can't lose on? Through one of our businesses, I have vetted 300 early stage businesses in calendar year 25. And I would say I would bet out of those a portion will fail probably in the next 24 months. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is, right? Next, trying to time the markets. I got in from Denver last night. I'm headed to San Francisco today. I look at a lot of transactions, and I can tell you when you think you're timing the markets is when the markets beat you. You don't win very often. And I'm not a big gambler, but I love having people tell me how much money they made in Vegas. Any of you have these friends? You would not believe how much money I won at blackjack. And I'm just sitting there going, I wonder how many questions I'm gonna ask. Let's see, how many trips did you take? How much did you lose the previous 5 times? What did you earn? And none of those things they want to talk about, right? Because we all want to remember things that are pleasant, maybe not factual. And lastly, pick a professional, whoever it is, that can be comfortable to you, that you can be vulnerable with. Some of my team today, and I've had offices all over the country, it's a little bit like a minister or a pastor in some ways of your fears, your concerns. What do you want to do with your kids? How do you want to treat your grandkids? All this ends up being things we're teaching, even when we don't even know that we're teaching. And so hopefully that matters, but find an advisor you can work with that's helpful. Now, these things you know, but I still think it's important. You know, growing your business revenue fixes a lot of problems. I always like these people that want to get hung up on all these things they worry about. If you can grow your business revenue, I can fix a lot of other things for you. If you don't, it gets pretty hard. Tax efficient strategies, make sure what you're doing from a tax perspective is effective. Smart 401k, so if you, again, congratulations on being business owners, you need to set something up to save money, the deduction helps you. Pick somebody to help you manage money. The 2 things in life that we're not supposed to use emotion on, and I have failed at both, 1 is your kids and 2 is money. Anybody ever say, use no emotion with your children, right? What happens when things get tense and you're raising kids? You guys ever had one of those dinner table discussions? You look back later and go, that wasn't the way I thought it was gonna go. Your money should not have that emotion either. And so both of those things, you need help, and a lot of times we can't do that on our own. Consistently do investing, proactive business planning. You guys work for an unbelievable business, and I've got to see it from a very close view. Make sure you know what your choices are, and at some point an exit. All right, so let's move on, just a couple of other things. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it, but you guys can save in a solo 401k up to almost $70,000 a year that's deductible. IRA is only $7,000, so you don't really have a problem in how much you can put away on a tax deductible basis. It's helping you. Get somebody that's there that will help you. And then beyond the stock market, I always like to talk about the other things. In our businesses, I run our real estate, venture, and private equity sides of the business. There are private investments, there are real estate investments, there's tax efficient. Get a firm that does more than one thing, because nobody should be putting all of their eggs in one basket. And as you satisfy something, markets tend to run in cycles. Things don't consistently go up anywhere. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but hopefully that's helpful. Now, I already said this, but a lot of people, men like pictures better than, print. I always do better. I'm a pilot. When I learned to fly, reading books wasn't helpful, but you put me in a cockpit, I could get it really, really quickly. So in learning, business income is the most important thing, because as you build a good business, you get to fund all these other things, right? Next, then you take care of your retirement planning. And then next, wealth buckets, which would be the things that we've talked about. So knowing that incomes can fluctuate and you're all in this business to be somewhat opportunistic and positive. How many of you wake up today and go, I hope I have a really terrible day in my next 5 presentations? Because if you're not, you might be in the wrong room. There's probably another room that's psychological help. So one of the things about being and running a business is you have to be excited and positive and believe something good is gonna happen each and every day, right? But you also need to have a way that if it doesn't, you're still okay. So these things are fine to be helpful. Now, doing it yourself, that's hard too. So the emotional comment. When you are doing all of your own decisions, what do you do when Russia invades Ukraine and the market starts going down? Which, by the way, that happened. What do you do in the next, I went through my lifetime, how many ups and down market cycles, and my hairline, guys, used to be right here, right above my eyes. And I don't have a lot left, and I think I only have so many down markets. It's just the way it works. So find a professional advisor. These guys can furnish our team's information. We handle, actually, City Lifestyle's 401k. I know a lot of the leadership, so if there's something we can do, just get somebody to help you. Get somebody that's helping you do a better job. And then these are the things that I would look for. One, professional guidance. This next one, it might be the most important thing even over return. Financial or emotional steadiness. Somebody that talks you off the ledge when things don't feel good on a particular day. All right? Customized planning, long-term accountability, experienced insight, tax-smart strategies, tools, and you really, really want long-term accountability. If you say you're gonna save 10% a year and you're like, we're gonna go to Tahiti. I don't know why I picked Tahiti. I've never been to Tahiti, it sounds fun. But if it costs you a year of savings, that's probably not what you wanna do right now. And then what I am so big into writing things down. And I don't know about you guys, and I bet I have hired 400 or 500 salespeople over the years, but as we write things down, guess what happens? You can't say, I didn't mean it, right? And so write down things that are goals. I have a financial meeting with my wife every December. I don't know why December. Christmas is always so low-key anyway. I guess we take one more thing and throw it on the list. But find a time of year where you're scheduling and talking and sharing goals. My wife is very different than I am, and she's very smart and very insightful. And I need to slow down and understand from her perspective, what are the things we're trying to accomplish in the next year? So have those financial meetings. And then little by little, if you look at this over a period of time, you'd be shocked in 8 to 10 years what's possible. So happy to have questions. I think, again, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time, I'm over, and I want Daniel to go through the second part of this that's so important, is the legal documents that match up with accumulating wealth. Daniel, I still said no lawyer jokes. I had two.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry. Good morning, my name's Daniel Schowengerdt. I'm an attorney with City Lifestyle, General Counsel, and also General Counsel of Prevail Wealth Management, where Kerry is. I've spent the last 17 years of my legal career litigating trust and will disputes and also business law disputes. And unfortunately, usually that's between families. Now my practice is dedicated to estate planning and business planning to keep families out of court. You just heard from Kerry Lawing, the best financial mind I've ever known, and he talked to you about how to build wealth. I'm gonna talk to you about estate planning and how you can secure that wealth. So I'm gonna do a difficult thing today and try to make estate planning not sexy, but it's not exactly a sexy topic, but it's a very important topic. So what we're gonna go over today generally, we're gonna talk about guardian designations for any of your minor children and why that's important and what happens if you don't do guardian designations. We're also gonna talk about incapacity planning. That's your power of attorneys for you, your parents, your adult children. And again, what happens if you have it versus if you don't have that in place. And then we're gonna talk about what most people think about with estate planning, which is revocable living trusts and wills. And I'm gonna give you the pros and cons to each one and walk through it at sort of a high level. So when we talk about estate planning, what is that? That's all these documents right here. And one thing to understand is this is the foundation. We can do all sorts of irrevocable trusts for high income earners, lots of fancy things, but if you don't have this, that's where you start. One thing I want you to notice about this list is there's only one line on trusts and wills. The rest of it has to do with guardian designations and incapacity planning. Arguably, the guardian designations and the incapacity planning is more important than your trusts, although that's very important as well. So let's talk about the why. You guys are in sales. I'm guessing you've learned there's a circle that talks about the why and the what. So when you're selling something, you're not just giving the media kits and the what. You're trying to get to the why. Why are they going to advertise? To grow their business. So why are you going to do estate planning? If you have minor children, it's absolutely necessary. If you don't plan, now I deal in Kansas and Missouri. Here's my little attorney disclaimer. I know probably 65, 70% of the people here are from other states. And I've designed this to where it should apply to all states. But my disclaimer is I'm just Kansas and Missouri. Check with your local attorney about yours. I have up here that if you don't have guardian designations, custody battles can happen. How is that? If mom and dad have passed away, how's there going to be a custody battle? I'll tell you a little story. It's a true story that happened a few years ago with a client of mine. A mother and father were driving down the road with their 10-year-old child. His name was Mac, in the back seat, and they tragically got in a car accident, and the parents were killed. Mac was sitting in the back middle seat, so he survived, but he spent the next 16 months of his life not knowing where his forever home was going to be because his aunt and uncle went through a bitter custody battle for him. And the reason for that is because the parents hadn't done any planning. The father had 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, and they fought over custody because the dad had told each one of them at one point, I want you to raise Mac, but they never put it in writing. Now, this aunt and uncle, they had problems long before this happened, but it created a vehicle for them to argue. And that's true with all of your estate planning. If you don't do it, your parents, you, or even your kids, if they don't do estate planning, it's allowing a vehicle for your family to argue. And that's really what the good estate planning attorneys specialize in, is trying to keep your family from fighting. Because if you already have the plan in place, there's nothing to fight about. At the end of Mac's case, we went 16 months. I represented the aunt, and she ultimately won, but really everyone lost because the aunt and uncle will never talk to each other again. Mac won't be able to see his uncle until he's 18, and we had to have Mac testify at the trial. And we weren't being insensitive by doing that. We had to, because of one of the statutory factors is what is his desire. And the biggest thing here is this is avoidable, easily avoidable. So how? That process, what it's called probate. Most of you have probably heard what probate is. The easy way to remember probate, it's the devil. Just remember, probate, devil, the same. Avoid it. The reason it's the devil is because no one plans on probate. Probate happens when you have a lack of planning, when people don't plan. And what it is, it's a court process where a judge divides your assets according to the law and says who the guardians are going to be of any minor children. It takes an average of 6 to 18 months, and at least in Kansas and Missouri, it costs 2 to 4% of your estate. So Kerry used the example of $1 million. Let's say you have $1 million, liquidate everything, your house, your vehicles, your accounts, and that's $1 million. On a simple probate, that's generally going to be $40,000 in attorney fees. Most attorneys on an estate plan are going to charge you $3,500 to $4,000, so a lot less. It's an incredibly difficult process. If anyone's been through a probate once, they're going to talk to all their family to avoid it. So how do you avoid probate? 2 really main ways to avoid it. First is what you're already thinking of, a revocable living trust. And we're going to go over that, what it is, the pros and cons of it. The second way, if you don't have minor children, is you can do payable on death and transfer on death designations on all your titled property and financial accounts. It has to be every single one. If you forget one, that's generally still going to go to probate. So trust, let's go over trusts a little bit. What are the benefits? First, it avoids that devil. If you fund it properly. So when someone creates a trust, about 80% of trusts in the United States are not funded. Funded means putting things into the trusts. Attorneys are really good at drafting trusts and really terrible about explaining how you put things actually into that trust. This avoids the probate as long as it's funded, and it's flexible. I'm going to tell you just kind of a pendulum of what you can decide with it. So with Max, he's going to receive all the money that his parents had at 18 years old. The judge had no discretion, no one had discretion over that. He's going to get that. And you can choose, you don't want to most likely, but you can, that's your freedom, because in the United States of America, we have freedom to contract. And trusts are contracts. So you can put anything in there you want to as long as it's legal. So we have all the way over here at 18, and then all the way over here, I had a client a few months ago, high net worth individual, and he instituted what he called the no slug rule. He has his kids that if they make whatever they make a year, that's what they're getting from the trust. And it goes on for generations. So if his kids make $20,000 a year, they get $20,000 a year from the trust. If they make $1 million a year, they get $1 million a year from the trust. May agree or disagree with it, but all that matters is that's what he wanted, and he was in control of that. Now, there's kind of a sweet spot in the middle that a lot of people do. For example, me, I have an 18 and 16-year-old. So if my wife and I pass away, my kids are going to get nothing until age 30. Up until 30, they're going to get what's called HEMS. HEMS is health, education, maintenance, and support. So they're going to be cared for. But I don't want them getting any money until 30, and I'll probably raise that. I've raised it and lowered it over the years, changing it. But I want them to go to college or trade school or go into a business. I don't want them to be trust fund babies. So at 30, they're going to get 1/3. At 35, they'll get 1/3. And at 40, they'll get 1/3. So I've got a question. Let's say I know what Mac's going to do when he turns 18. What do you guys think? And I'm actually asking for answers. What do you think the first thing is that most 18-year-olds buy if they get an influx of cash? Let's just say $300,000. Car. Okay. Do you guys know The Mentalist? You know, he goes to NFL things, and I've got a picture up here next. Can anyone guess what the picture is? Car. Okay, what color do you think it is? Yep. That's what they're going to buy. This is what 18-year-olds, I've represented several hundred 18-year-olds, and I implore them not to do it. They think they're doing an incredible financial job by taking the $150,000 in half, and they'll keep that, save it, maybe invest it, and the other $150,000 on a car that might last them 5 years. So Kerry's going to check me on this if I'm wrong. Let's say you forced them to invest that instead, because that was your plan. If they invested $150,000, and this is the compound interest that Kerry was talking about, if they invest that $150,000 from age 18 until 60, because of compound interest, that's going to be $2.75 million at 7% interest. At 10% interest, which is probably more realistic maybe, that's $8.5 million. So instead of having a car for 5 years, they're going to have $2 to $8 million for their retirement plan. An 18-year-old, their mind is not developed enough to say, I'm not going to buy that Mustang or that Ferrari. They're going to do it. So if you, as the parents or grandparents, make that decision for them and protect them really from themselves. Okay, other benefits of a trust. We're going to go over wills too. It keeps everything private. You can look up in Allen County, Kansas, Max's case. You can see the transcripts of how I questioned him. You can see everything about the case. You can see exactly how much money his parents left him. It's completely public. Trusts are private, so no one's going to be able to see what's being distributed. Really neat feature of them is it can protect your family from your inheritance from divorce and creditors as well. Not you. If you create a revocable trust, it doesn't protect you. It does protect the next generation under what's called a spendthrift provision, and it's in most all trusts. How that works is, like, for example, my kids, if they're 25 years old and they haven't gotten a distribution yet, then if they get sued or my trustee gets sued, that money is generally unavailable to be taken. Divorce. Unfortunately, the divorce rate in this country is about 50%. That hasn't fluctuated much over the last few decades. So in the event of a divorce, I don't know many people who say, I'd really like my ex-son-in-law or my ex-daughter-in-law to get half my stuff. Nobody really says that. If it's in a trust and it's still sitting in trust, I did divorce law for 15 years, and when the other side had a trust, we knew we couldn't touch it because there's a protection in place that it doesn't go. And you can even, in your trust, say, okay, daughter, son, you have to get a prenuptial agreement, and it doesn't have to be a full prenuptial agreement. It can just say your spouse, if you get divorced, they're not going to inherit from this trust. I've drafted several hundred prenuptial agreements. Sometimes there are arguments when it's a normal prenup. I have never had an argument when someone says, well, the trust says we have to do this, and it makes sense. It makes sense that the ex-spouse is not going to get the inheritance. There's also incapacity protection. We have a lot of business owners here. If you become incapacitated, your trustee can generally run your business. And sometimes it's going to help prevent a liquidation event, and it's going to prevent someone else coming in with a business, and it's going to keep it running. And then charitable giving, which you all know. You can, of course, give to your church or local charity if that's something that's important to you. So those are trusts. How about a will? A will isn't always the worst option, and I'll tell you why. Now, this applies across all 50 states. A common misconception people think is that if I have a will, it avoids probate. You're not avoiding that devil with a will. You're not. It will go to probate. What you can do is you can name guardians in your will. You can do what's called a testamentary trust and say you want your kids to get the money at certain age groups. But the difference is that's going to go to probate. That's going to do that 6 to 18-month process, the 2 to 4% of the state with the will alone. But there's one major benefit of a will versus a trust, and that's how you don't have to retitle assets. We talked about funding. So in a trust, you have to put all your assets into the trust. With a will, you don't have to do that. So a will is a little bit easier for you now, a lot harder for your family later. A trust is a little bit harder now, a lot easier for your family later. Okay, incapacity planning. This is the really important topic for you. The trusts, that's for your family. The incapacity planning, this is for you. This is for your parents. Most of us are going to become incapacitated in one form or another before we pass away. That's just reality, where we're not going to be able to take care of our finances or our health care. See, Andy Mann's his name up here. There he is. Andy is my brother-in-law. This is the hypothetical. Everything else is true. This one's a hypothetical. Let's say Andy calls me and says, Daniel, can you do a power of attorney for my dad? Me, along with everyone else, would ask him, okay, why? What's going on? And if he says, well, he can't take care of his finances or he can't take care of his healthcare needs, I'm going to have to tell him it's too late. I can't do a power of attorney for him because if he's not competent to take care of his medical or his financial, he's not competent to sign a power of attorney. In that case, and I've had it hundreds of times, where we have to go in and file a guardian and conservatorship for the parent. It is a terrible, embarrassing process. Andy would have to hire an attorney, then he would have to hire a separate attorney for his dad, and then Andy's dad would have to, his doctor would have to come testify in court in front of him, usually with other people in the room, all the bad things about how he can't take care of his health care, he can't take care of his finances, and they have to go into detail on why not for the judge to order that. And then they order this guardian and conservatorship, and it's generally pretty expensive. And it's avoidable. So, how is it avoidable? Let's go through kind of briefly. We're getting towards the end here, but what are these documents? You know what most of them are. First, your financial power of attorney. What that does is it would allow Andy to be able to make financial decisions for his dad. Pay bills, take care of his checking account. And there's a practical aspect also. This was 3 weeks ago. We had some fraud on our account, and I called the bank and got new debit cards for my wife and I both, or I was trying to. It's a joint account, and the bank that I represent said, you can't do that, she has to call in. I said, come on, it's a joint account. They said, no, you can't. So it took me 10 seconds, I emailed them my financial power of attorney, and we were good. So there's a practical aspect. When we bought our house a few years ago, I was out of town, so my wife was able to sign for me. So this isn't just in the case of something incapacity, it's also now that you can have it. Your healthcare power of attorney, that's vital. You can have this for, you can name anyone you want, but generally what that does is it allows Andy to make healthcare decisions for his dad. Take him to the doctor, consent to surgeries if he's not able to. And again, if he doesn't do that, we're going down the guardian conservatorship route. The next one's HIPAA authorizations. This is a relatively new document. What this does is it allows whoever you want to be able to access your medical information. For example, I have 9 brothers and sisters, and I have all of them on my list of HIPAA authorizations, even Steven, that he can get my health information. So if I'm in the hospital and I don't want everyone calling my wife, I can put who I want on there. Now, they can't make decisions because I don't want them to, but they can get information. And then the last document is a living will or advance directive. Many of you know when you go to the hospital, they'll ask, do you have a living will or advance directive? So what is that? That's your end-of-life care instructions. And that's the theme here. All of this is just giving a roadmap and giving a plan. So this is your plan for end-of-life decisions. The most common one, the one that I have, is a Kansas form that says that if 2 doctors, one being my attending physician, say that I am brain dead and I'm not coming back, they're gonna pull the plug. The reason I have that is because I don't want my wife making that call. And I don't wanna make that call with my parents. Because if I do, some family members may say, you didn't have enough faith, or why'd you pull the plug on mom? But this was their decision. And so it's your decision what you want, and the only way to do it is through that advance directive or living will. So avoid the devil at all costs. If you don't remember anything else, just remember, probate, devil. That's what it is. And I hope you've seen today, wills and trusts are very important, but they're just one small piece. Remember, the wills and trusts, that's for your kids, that's for the beneficiaries. The incapacity planning, that's for you, to have dignity when you're older. You don't have to go into court for a guardian and conservatorship. I'm going to be around. I think I'm staying for lunch. Kerry's going to travel the world, but I'll be here. I'll be here tonight. So if you guys have questions, feel free to come up. We may have a few minutes, actually, for questions now. I'm not sure. But I also have a QR code if you'd like. If you want to get more information, that just is a QR code to my calendar if you want to have a further discussion. No, it's 2,000 now, Andy, for you. Call me about your dad. So thank you, guys. I don't know if we have time for questions. If we do, we can, or I'll be around. Thank you.